If you behave this way and do this work and the neighborhood sees you, when it comes time to give news, especially bad news, guys, we need a $1 special assessment and we're going to ask the homeowners to pay for half the bill and the HOA will pay for the other half, like we did for the roof, you're going to get passed with 95% because they trust you, because you're trustworthy, because they see you doing the work. And then you can leverage that trust into making a decision that's not only in the best interest of the business and the building, but is also the right decision to make with homeowner support, which is a big one.
HOA Insights is brought to you by 5 companies that care about board members: Association Insights and Marketplace, Association Reserves, Community Financials, Kevin Davis Insurance Services, and the Inspectors of Election. You'll find links to their website and social media in the show notes.
Welcome back to HOA Insights, Common Sense for Common Areas. I'm Robert Nordland, and I'm here today for episode 164 with a special board member guest, Peter Isakovic. Peter's a homeowner and a board member in Colorado. He serves on the board of the CAI Rocky Mountain Chapter, and he came to my attention because of an article he recently wrote for their news magazine there at CAI Rocky Mountain Chapter. Topic was, are Preferred Contractors Preferred? It was a cautionary article on the importance of checking that your primary service providers are continuing to serve in the best interest of your association and are not abusing the relationship by overcharging or underserving. That resonated with me because one of the first things I did as president of my association back in 1982 was to ask for significant reductions in cost from our management company, pool service provider, and garbage pickup service because all 3 were significantly overcharging. They'd been taking advantage of the prior board. Now, I hope this is not the case with your association, but we want to share Peter's experience in this matter to make sure you don't have blind spots at your association that are costing you money. Well, if you're a new listener, we're here weekly with episodes to help you with the hard work of being a board member. Last week, for example, was episode 163 with regular co-host Kevin Davis on more tips how to successfully work with insurance at your association. If you missed it, you can catch prior episodes on our website, on any major podcast platform, or on our YouTube channel. And if you like the show, by all means, subscribe and join us in our mission to improve board member leadership all across the country, one episode and one association at a time. Well, those of you watching on YouTube can see the HOA Insights mug that I have here that I got from our merch store, which you can browse through from our hoainsights.org website or the link in our show notes. In addition to some of the merch we have for sale, we have some great free stuff there like board member Zoom backgrounds that you can download for your next online meeting. Well, we enjoy hearing from you, responding to the issues you're facing at your association. So if you have a hot topic, a crazy story, or a question you'd like us to address, you can contact us at 805-203-3130 or email us at podcast@hoainsights.org. Today's episode was on me. As I said a moment ago, I resonated with the message that Peter shared in his article and wanted to have him on the show to tell his story. So, Peter, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Robert.
Well, let's start off with what got you on the board of CAI Rocky Mountain Chapter in addition to being board member at your own association?
The way I got on the board, I first moved into my building as a renter. And I was a renter for 8 years before I ended up buying first the unit next to me and then buying the unit inside or that I'm in right now. Over the years, I made friends with people in the building, made friends with the board members. And so when I became an owner and I became eligible to run for the board, I had slightly more interest in being involved with the board than the rest of the community, which, as it is in many communities, had no interest in being involved on the board. I was asked to join almost as a fill-in, I think. I was friends with the board members. There was a spot open. I had an interest in the board. I have a background running businesses. I knew what was going on with the building. And, I wanted to lend a hand, be involved. I had no idea what I was getting into. I had no idea the storm that the building was about to go into. It's definitely more than I signed up for. And then with CAI, as we might talk about in this podcast, after I succeeded in accomplishing a lot of good for the building and turning this building around, I mean, our building was facing bankruptcy, imminent special assessments. We owed money all over town. We had massive deferred maintenance problems. Today, we don't have any deferred maintenance. We're fully funded reserves. We haven't had to raise dues. We got $400,000 in the bank, and we have zero deferred maintenance. It was a pretty massive turnaround. And sort of on the high of that turnaround, I learned about the CAI organization, and I asked to run for the board. And they didn't even acknowledge my application. They're like, who are you? You're a homeowner. You're not a vendor. You're not a platinum sponsor. But they did invite me to join the homeowner leadership committee. And I guess they really liked what I had to say. So I'm now vice president of the board. Again, in a somewhat unique position, because I'm one of the only board members that, it doesn't cost me any business speaking my mind and sharing my story. I don't have any vested interest at all in anything industry related. I just want homeowners to learn, what I did, the pitfalls we found, and hopefully run their organizations and their businesses really better.
That's interesting because, like you say, so much of CAI is run by managers and attorneys and reserve estate providers and landscapers and elevator service providers, all these people who are charging associations. And now you're a voice that you're just a homeowner on the other side. You're the one hiring all these services, and you have a fundamentally different viewpoint being on the other side of the desk.
It's a unique perspective. And that's something I noticed. We'd go, you start going to these CAI events, and you see all these providers, and you see all these property managers, and I'm like, where's the customer? Where's the board member that actually needs to be talking to these people on the front line? And why is there such poor attendance, frankly, from the homeowners? Like, do they not know about the organization? Is it apathy? Do they not have time? Do they not care? Is it a combination of all that? And then you start calculating what the financial damage of that is, and what the consequences could be, just based on what I saw, and you start doing similar triangles of like, geez, like what happens if this scales out over, I think we have 385,000 HOAs across the country.
Right.
The total sum of poor decision-making is a staggering number, and certainly an area for an opportunity for vast improvement. That's what I'm excited about. And, the training, the education is part of it, but really getting in front of these vendors, the good guys and the bad actors, right? Like there's some contractors are better than others, some managers are better than others. So having an opportunity to be in the room with them and to talk to them and interact, it just enables the board to make, a better decision. And from what I've seen, there's certainly an opportunity for a lot more better decision making.
There's two ways I look at it. One is that this entire industry is built on the strong backs of volunteer board members. Everything is based on the presumption that the volunteer board members are going to run a multi-million-dollar not-for-profit real estate entity successfully. And you got onto the board and you realized that they hadn't been doing that. You talked about the association being out of money, a lot of bad things going on, problems everywhere you look, and it takes leadership and it takes wise decisions to turn that around, to right the ship, balance the books, all those kinds of things. And then we have a trade organization, CAI, and CAI is, I want to say, as good as it can be at doing what it does. It is interestingly unique in that it has providers of services and the receivers, the providers and the purchasers of services in the same organization. When you think about the American Medical Association, American Bar Association, those are all about the doctors and the attorneys. They don't have patients at their conferences saying that doctor had poor bedside manner or that attorney just didn't care about my case, those kinds of things. And in CAI, we have that interesting balance of the service providers, the managers, the attorneys, all that kind of thing, and the homeowners. And so I'm glad that you're there, um, reminding everyone that there's two sides to this equation.
Being able to go to these events and peek behind the curtain and kind of see, because it's a trade organization. The job of a trade organization isn't to vet its members. You've got bad people that join country clubs, right? And by going to that country club, you meet them and you have the power to make the choice to not work with them. Boards have a lot of power, actually. We have the ability to fire people that we don't want to work with and to hire people that we do want to work with. People forget that. Everyone gets all crazy and excited and like, we can sue. You don't have to sue. You just need to fire them and go on with somebody that's going to provide better and learn from it and share it. And, over time, the bar is raised and the bad actors will on their own leave because it's not profitable anymore because the cat's out of the bag. And I'll tell you, a smart customer is a difficult customer, an informed client, a board member because it's unrealistic to think that a board member is going to be an expert in running a building, right? Like these are all, no matter how good the board is, with very rare exception, nobody really knows how to run the building. Nobody has experience in it. You're dealing with a very broad set of systems, of mechanical systems, of things that you're not familiar with. Like everybody knows what a gallon of gas costs. Like how much is $20 of gas, right? Like, if you're driving a cheap truck in Indiana, it's $85. If you're driving a Mercedes in LA, it's $150. Everybody knows what gas costs. But how much does 20 gallons of glycol cost? And so now you have to make these decisions. And these are sometimes 6-figure decisions, 7-figure decisions that are being made. And you're relying on people that in theory, on paper, the model of the HOA is great. You've got this board, which is a governing body that represents all the interests of the homeowners, that hired this property manager that is going to, offer them scale and introductions to vendors that they work with that are reputable, that are vended, and that the vendors are looking out, but really the only fiduciary responsibility falls on that board. And, maybe the people that you're surrounding yourself with, even the ones that have the best intentions, maybe aren't the best choice.
I hear a little weariness in your voice there.
I do have to play golf with these people. So, and so and I don't want to say anything, accusatory. I'm just saying, like, if you do your homework, if you're walking through a bad neighborhood with your wallet in your front pocket, you're not going to get pickpocketed. That's what I'm saying. And so there's many, many ways in that article. What I was trying to point out is these are just some of the ways that you could protect yourself, that you could brace yourself, things to look for, things that, even with our experiences and our board, which, is I'd like to say we're at least relatively intelligent. Man, we got broadsided by a lot of things, which we discovered. And so that's what I tried to underscore.
For the prior board, was it not that they were bad people? Had they just presumed that everything was okay and just were coasting along? Did they have just blind spots everywhere?
We had a relationship with a management company that started to turn. And that was what happens, we noticed, 7 years before I got involved in this, 7 years earlier, things were great. But then there were behaviors within the management company that the board didn't catch, that were ironically presented to us, that we in some ways approved in the contracts that we signed, in the budgets that we ratified, in the emails that we sent, be like, sounds good, do it. We basically approved and agreed to all the bad behavior, which was presented to us in a way that was murky and difficult to see and not intuitive. And so I put some of the blame, certainly on a change in, if we had known how this operation was working, we would have immediately gone to a different management company. But we didn't know that. That was something that we didn't discover until, the things happened that made me roll up my sleeves and start digging. And really it came down to, kind of like bouncing around the story here a little bit, but, me and another homeowner who isn't on the board, we reverse engineered our cash flow statements off of our bank statements, off of our check registers. And we manually entered 2,497 checks, typing vendor and then what for and the amount. And by reverse engineering our financials off of the check register, we were able to discover that the management company was using 54 cost centers to take little bits of money from us. And because the amounts of the money were less than $1,500, we had agreed as a board that anything less than $1,500, the management company had approval to pay.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And so we would find ourselves in a situation where, like, let's say the plumbing, we approved the budget of plumbing for $8,200. Okay. $8,200 plumbing. Well, now we got to do sewer. Well, of course we have to do sewer, and surprised that's not in the budget. Let's approve it. Okay. Well, now we got to do pipe jetting. Well, now we have to do pipe scaling. Well, now we have emergency. So all of a sudden we had 7, 8 plumbing things. My attorney called it death by paper cuts. But the crazy thing is, and that's why I point out in that article that I write, the importance of your contract is that the contract we had with this management company basically absolved them of any wrongdoing from that. We approved it. You can't sue somebody for doing a bad job if you hire them and approve the bad job that they're doing.
You hired them to do that. You said, go ahead and do it.
If you hire a Subaru mechanic to do, heart surgery and you die, it's kind of on you. And that was a huge lesson that we learned. It's a really important lesson for boards to learn. The language of that contract is everything. And so there were layers and layers on this. I mean, the HVAC mechanical company was the most egregious vendor in some ways what they were doing. And I've got example after example, but my role as taking over as president of the building, it happened. So somebody broke our front door.
Okay.
And our management company comes in and says it's going to cost $28,000 to fix a front door.
Ouch. Yeah.
And I'm like, that number is nuts, right? Let me look into this and start doing some diligence. This number is crazy. No, we've used them for years. This is going to be a good door. Okay, well, I've got a commercial real estate background. I've done my fair share of tenant improvement builds. I know what a front door costs: 11 grand, 14 grand, 9,500 if you know a guy. It's never $28,000. So that was
it's a 10 grand range.
Yeah, 10-ish, right? And so this number really stuck out. So I started to dig deep, and and by this point we had realized, we're like, wait a minute, what do you mean we're out of money? 2 years ago when I joined the board, we had 200 grand. A neighbor walked in while I was messing with the door, and she's like, hey, you're working on the door. That's great. I love that you guys are doing all this stuff in the building. Maybe we can put a tiki bar on the roof of the building and like some tiki trees and torches. And I'm like, tiki bar? Like, we're definitely not going to do a tiki bar. We're going to be lucky if we get out of this without getting a special assessment. Yeah. And I said that. And I said that because I was being honest. Oh my God, that spread like wildfire through the building. And, the board members that were trying to sell, the homeowner who was friends with the board member that had just, grifted 52 grand from the board because he was the contractor that was doing these partitions and improvements in the building. Like, what do you mean? Like, who's this guy? How's he involved? Anyway, I was told that I was going to get a cease and desist for running my mouth and, spreading rumors that we have a special assessment. Meanwhile, we are broke and we have one boiler of 2 boilers down and we have a leaking roof. Like, we're going to,
it's not a good way in Colorado to face the winter.
No. And also, like, I'm going to be honest with my neighbors, and I was concerned. This is my investment. This is my money. I own 2 units in here. Every time these Muppets make a decision that costs $1, it costs me $4. So, I was also looking after my investment. In fact, that was a platform that I ran on. Like, I'm not doing this because I love my neighbor. I love my investment. Run this business as best as it could be run. So that's what made me. And when they threatened me with the cease and desist for running my mouth, I talked to my attorney, and he said, I asked him, what do I do? It scared me. And he goes, well, most people listen to it. Some people take out full page ads. Some people, build web pages. And so I was like, well, wait, can I take this cease and desist and blow it up and post it to my hallway door so every realtor that walks by can see it? He's like, you could. So then I then I started playing offense, and I went back to my board and I go, give me that cease and desist, because we have problems here and we're going to disclose them and we're going to be straight with our neighbors. And I never got the cease and desist. But me taking that position, now the neighbors notice me and they're like, who's this Pete guy? Who's this guy on the board? And then they tried to do a 20% dues increase, and I rallied the building behind me to overcome that dues increase. Because as you know, in the bylaws, your vote is yes, unless you show up and say no.
Okay.
And as remarkable as the evidence that I had was, and the proof that I had was, that we needed to focus on cutting costs rather than raising dues. Like, before we pay the band more money, let's stop the Titanic from sinking. This is what, would you believe that with all the proxies that I had and all the support that I had, 50.3% is how much vote I was able to secure with my passionate, evidence-backed narrative. That's all I was able to. So barely, but we were able to overcome this dues increase, which then opened up the conversation to dig deeper. And, and at that point I rolled up my sleeves. I'm like, wait a minute, there's a chance I'm going to get sued here. I better figure out what I'm talking about. And that's when I blew open, and it was like, the door was the least of our problems. So looking back, if I could pay 28 grand for the door and have everything else be good, I would have paid 38 grand for the door. It was cataclysmic what was going on.
Yeah. Well, Peter, let me, I've been taking notes here.
Yeah, let's on the checklist.
Yeah. You said you wanted to run it like a business. And I think there's so many board members that don't appreciate that it is a business. You have income, you have expenses, they need to balance. I face so many associations that have done so many years of cost cutting that the only way to balance the budget is to indeed raise assessments. And you were in a different situation, or I'm not sure actually what the statistics are, but your primary problem was leaking money. And I was thinking death by 1,000 razor cuts. You said something similar.
Yeah, death by paper.
The 1,000 paper cuts. Yeah. Just that you're leaking money, and that's no way to do it. But tell the truth. Just make sure that I believe that the truth is a strong place to stand on. And you had to find that truth. And fortunately for your association, you had enough votes to be able to say, okay, hey, let's do this right. Anyway, I want to get to your list, and I see what time we are, so we're going to have to actually go through your list somewhat kind of rapid fire. But at this point in time, let's take a quick break to hear from one of our generous sponsors, after which we'll be back with more Common Sense for Common Areas.
Are you part of a homeowners association or condominium board? Making the right financial decisions for your community's future is crucial. At Association Reserves, we're proud to serve communities nationwide, specializing in reserve studies tailored to your community's unique needs. Our expert team helps you accurately assess your property's assets, forecast future expenses, and develop a solid funding plan. Whether you're a small HOA or a large condominium association, we've got you covered. Visit reservestudy.com to learn more and get a proposal for your association. And
we're back. Well, we're here with Peter Isakovic, and fascinating board member for his association, board member for CAI Rocky Mountain Chapter. Peter, let's get to some of the things that you recommend boards do to make sure that the service providers are indeed doing a good job for the association. The first thing you had on your list was review past invoices.
Yeah, that's a big one. As you start to investigate, how you're running your business, you got to look at, what you've been doing, what you've been approving, what you've been paying. A good place to look is look at past invoices that you paid, look at, the work that was done, get a second opinion, get a third opinion. If you suspect that, a vendor is overcharging, the example you gave when you took over
forever ago.
During the Renaissance period, the 1982.
Thank you.
And you said, trash removal, you looked at it and you're like, wow, this number is 4 times more than what I was quoted when I said, what is the cost of trash removal? Doing things like that help keep the whole process honest. Vendors will put down part numbers on work that was done. Google those part numbers. I remember when I had my heat pump worked on and I got charged for R32 or whatever the refrigerant was for my heat pump. And I'm like, this seems like a high number. So then I Google R32 and it was a high number. He marked me up 10X for the R32. And so I called him out on it. He gave me an answer that I didn't like. That was the last time he came to my unit and the last time he came to the building. So a lot of the wrongdoing is actually right there in your files already presented to the board. And I urge the board to, start looking through there if they have any suspicions,
I like that. We talk on the podcast about the 4 C's of being a great board member. One is you got to care about your association. It starts with that. You got to be curious. You got to have courage. And in your case, you've been talking about at the right time, you need to fire someone and let them go, and then communicate what's going on to the homeowners. So you're a team together. And I like that combination of being curious and having courage. And I'm not sure a lot of board members appreciate that they're going to be asked to do those kinds of things.
It helps so much too. Like if you, because your neighbors will see you, they'll see you walking the building with different vendors and they'll ask, what are you doing? And you tell them transparently, this is what I'm doing because I care about the property and I'm curious to find out what the actual pricing is and to get to it. Like if it costs $12,000, it costs $12,000. If it costs $6,000, I want to know why they're charging us $6,000. There might be a very reasonable value add to it. Maybe they've got better insurance and better workman's comp than these guys. Okay, we can factor that in. But one thing that the board needs to realize that if you behave this way and do this work and the neighborhood sees you, when it comes time to give news, especially bad news, guys, we need a $1 special assessment and we're going to ask the homeowners to pay for half the bill and the HOA will pay for the other half like we did for the roof, you're going to get passed with 95% because they trust you, because you're trustworthy, because they see you doing the work. And then you can leverage that trust into making a decision that's not only in the best interest of the business and the building, but is also the right decision to make with homeowner support, which is a big one. You don't have to swim upstream as a board. You just need your community to know that you're working in their best interest. That's why I've always been transparent, arguably to the, maybe sometimes to my detriment. Oh, it's like, God, I shouldn't have said that. Or, now this launched a 30-minute conversation, but it matters.
Yeah. And then you say roll up your sleeves and be visible, be an engaged client, have the homeowners see you walking around. You also said that sometimes a smart customer is a difficult customer because you're asking questions. And maybe that alert that the service provider hears or feels is that, okay, I need to make sure I have good answers, good pricing, because ABC Villas is going to call me on it if I say $28,000 and they say, well, why not something in the $10,000 range? Yeah, you need to be able to challenge that. Always use legitimate service providers and contractors. That almost sounds like that could be a little more expensive.
No matter what community you're living in, you're not going to hire your wife's cousin's roommate to do a repair, right? You're going to need to hire somebody that's insured, first of all. And that's, by the way, a big one. Make sure your attorney looks at that insurance. Make sure that they're insured for multifamily. Make sure their company has deep enough pockets or deep enough reinsurance so that if there is an issue, they don't have the ability to fold up in the middle of the night and leave town. We had that happen. We won a $300,000 judgment against the roofing company that literally changed their name, vanished, and then it turns out that the insurance that they provided us wasn't approved for multifamily. And so we were right, we had this judgment, but there was nothing we could do about it. So that's like a lesson learned. And that's why I put that in high up in the article, be like, first things first, make sure you're working with qualified people. And yeah, they're going to cost more. And that is an okay upcharge, hire someone with workman's comp.
Well, you said it earlier. If the $28,000 front door was the only thing, then it was money well spent. And you want to be able to spend money correctly at the right time. And you're running a tight ship and you want to make sure it's watertight. And sometimes watertight does cost a little bit extra money, but it means you're not leaking money. And that's the trouble. Talk to me about contracts, your contract versus their contract, that kind of thing.
When things go wrong, it comes down to the language in your contract. It doesn't matter what was said. What matters is what was signed. And the contract that vendors generally provide are going to be very friendly to that vendor. you need to have your attorney that works for you draft and prepare a contract that has teeth in it. In the event things go wrong, that protect you. For example, change orders is a big place for contractors to make money. When we were getting bids on our roof, to do our roof, we got bids ranging from $85,000 to $400,000.
Okay.
And it's like, okay,
wow.
Are you gold crusting the roof? Like, why is
Yeah.
why is it difference in price? And then you start looking at, the amount of materials, what materials. And so the short answer is, you need a contractor that says, listen, this is a job that we're going to do. This is the amount of materials we're going to need to do. This is going to be the type of materials we're going to do, the number of hours, the number of this, right? And they're going to put that down and put it forward. And your contract needs to say, okay, we agree to this. And by the way, you can't come back now and say, you know what, we were wrong. It turns out you need 3 times as much tile. Then that's why your bid now goes up from 80,000 to 170,000. No. If it turns out that you underestimated the amount of material that we need, that's not on you. And your attorney will have that language in the contract to protect you. Their contract will not. And it's a big one.
And I liked your last comment in the article, building your preferred suppliers who work for you, not the management company. And that'll give you continuity through the years, through management transitions, people that are loyal to you, not just the management company.
Yeah, because things change. Again, the board's actually a really powerful entity. The board can, fire, management companies that they don't like, that they don't think are doing a good job. And when that happens, all those preferred vendors go out the window. And the preferred vendor shouldn't be representing the management company anyway. It should be representing your best interests. And the board should be hiring vendors. Yeah, it's like you work for us. And so as a hands-on board, because of what happened to us, we are very frontline with all of our vendors. In fact, in our management contracts, they had language that said, we're going to do a 15 or 20% project management fee on project. We struck that out. We said, we don't want you involved. We're going to be involved with that. We're going to handle that. Because you come into situations, and, to talk on that point, we've got a plumber, a vendor that came, and he jetted our pipes. And I think the cost was like $2,800 to jet our pipes. He wanted to get in. It was the first time in the building. His name's Mike. Great. We hired Mike. About 3 months ago, we needed to get our pipes jetted again. So we reach out to Mike, and Mike's office comes back to us with a bid for $3,500. So I call Mike and I go, hey man, we need you to do the same job again. It's going to be easier this time because you just did it a year ago. It's going to be even faster. You kind of know the drill. You could send out a guy. Can you do it for the price you did it a year and a half ago? And if you can, I'll approve it right now. And he said, you know what? Yes, I'll do it for that. Great. We just saved $700 and we approved them. But then about 6 weeks later, we had an after-hours emergency clog. And so I called Mike. And I go, Mike, it's Saturday night, 8:30. Sorry, we got an issue. There's water backfilling into the laundry rooms of these ground floor units. Can you send somebody out? An hour later, a guy came out, did what he had to do, wrapped it up. He left by 10:30. It was done. And we got a bill for $440, right? Because it was an after-hour charge, a special trip. You know what? We paid it. We paid it and we said, thank you. You know what? You earned that extra $200, $300 for whatever. Well, I mean, you stuck a pipe, it was fixed. Whatever. So, treat your vendors right. If they treat you right, hold them where there's a reason to say, hey man, let's back up on this and be a little bit more competitive. And here's why. If they give you that, then you give them back when they go above and beyond and they earn it. And now me and Mike have a great relationship, and he gets all of our plumbing business plus other plumbing business that I refer him to. So Mike wins, we win. We saved $800 on the jetting. We were able to fix the clog after hours.
Yeah, no, I like that. I like the win-win relationships, and you can do that. You can do that. Peter, fantastic. Great conversation. It was fun having you on the program to share some of your lessons learned. It sounds like there was some bumpy times. You were the right guy at the right time for your association. And for everyone listening, I will have a link to Peter's CAI Rocky Mountain Chapter article in the show notes. But any closing thoughts to add at this time?
You touched on this before. This is your business. This is your money. This is supposed to matter. It needs to be treated with that respect. This is like running a turnaround corporation, and it should matter. And if you are on the board, roll up your sleeves and do the homework, because, I brag about how we never had to raise dues in 5 years. That's a little misleading. What we did was we reduced the cash flow bleed by $70,000 a month. We were actually in a position where we could have reduced dues by 30%, and we didn't. So effectively, we kept dues flat, but really we kept all this money that we were able to funnel into reserves to build up reserves. So,
oh, you're a man speaking my language here.
Yeah, I mean, care about your property. Never mind the neighbors. Take care of your money and take care of your investment. And out of respect for running a business well, run the building well, and reach out. CAI is full of great resources where you can meet people that are honest, that will be able to help, and you can meet some dishonest ones too. And you put them in the room, and you'll be like, I'm gonna go with this guy, not this guy. You have the ability to do that and take advantage of it. It's right there in front of you.
I like that. Well, we certainly hope you learned some HOA insights from our discussion today with Peter that helps you bring common sense to your common areas. We look forward to having you join us for another great episode next week.
You've been listening to HOA Insights, Common Sense for Common Areas. You can listen to the show on our podcast website, hoainsights.org, or subscribe on any of the most popular podcast platforms. You can also watch the show on our YouTube channel. Check the show notes for helpful links. If you like the show and want to support the work we do, you can do so in a number of ways. The most important thing you can do is engage in the conversation. Leave a question in the comments section on our YouTube video. You can also email your questions or voice memos to podcast@hoainsights.org or leave us a voicemail at 805-203-3130. If you gain any insights from the show, please do us a huge favor by sharing the show with other board members you know. You can also support us by supporting the brands that sponsor this program. Please remember that the views and opinions expressed by the podcast do not constitute legal advice. You'll want to consult your own legal counsel before making any important decisions. Finally, this podcast was expertly mixed and mastered by Stokelight Video and Marketing. With Stokelight on your team, you'll reach more customers with marketing expertise that inspires action. See the show notes to connect with Stokelight.